Tracy and Marilyn were best friends. They were inseparable at school and almost always went to each other's houses after school. Both of them were in Miss Weichelman's 5th grade class. How they loved Miss Weichelman. Everyone in class did. Miss Weichelman made their classroom seem almost like home. She put a lamp on her desk and she framed almost everyone's drawings and hung them on the walls. She had a rug right up in the front of the room next to her desk where she read to her class from a big old rocking chair, and there was a class guinea pig, Pinky, who squeaked whenever anyone walked by him. What everyone liked most about Miss Weichelman is that she made every kid in the classroom believe that he or she could be anything they wanted to be. If you dream it, then you can be it. Marilyn wanted to be a pianist. She took lessons every week and had a grand piano in her living room. Tracy loved to hear her practice. Tracy didn't know what she wanted to be, really. She did know that it made her feel warm inside whenever she was helping someone. Almost every day, just as the last bell was about to ring, Miss Weichelman would point to a basket of fresh lemons that she always kept on her desk and say, "And if life hands you a lemon or two today, and you all know how sour lemons are," everyone would make a face. "Just add water and sugar, and what do you have?" Then she'd pause and the whole class would call out, "Lemonade!" Tracy and Marilyn stayed after school one afternoon to help Miss Weichelman put up career day posters. Miss Weichelman pinned up a picture of a doctor. "Once I thought I'd be a doctor. Why, I even completed my pre-med courses, but I discovered being a teacher was just as important to me. After all, doctors help your bodies grow up healthy and strong, and teachers help your minds grow wise and full of ideas," Miss Weichelman said thoughtfully. Soon after, as Tracy and Marilyn were walking home, they heard voices behind them. "Waddle, waddle, waddle," one of the older girls sneered. "Fatty, fatty, 2x4, couldn't get through the classroom door," the other chimed in. "Don't listen to them." Tracy pulled Marilyn along a little faster. The older girls hissed and whispered mean secrets and then laughed as loud as they could. Finally, those mean girls turned down another street. "I would do just about anything to be thin," Marilyn cried. Tracy put her arm around Marilyn's shoulder. They didn't say much more for the rest of the way home. As weeks passed, school went on as usual, except Tracy noticed Marilyn was losing weight. She was looking great. Even the mean girls didn't tease her anymore. And then one Wednesday, as the girls were planting flowers in Marilyn's front garden, Marilyn collapsed in a heap on the grass. "I can't breathe," she gasped. "I'm so tired, I don't even think I can get up." "But you haven't gone on one of those awful diets, have you, Marilyn? Because you know it's not good for kids to do that." "Well, that's just it," Marilyn answered. "I've lost all this weight without doing anything." Tracy looked worried. "Well, it just melted off, but I feel so tired. And I'm always tired," Marilyn said weakly. "I'm getting your mom." Tracy knew something was very wrong. Marilyn didn't come back to school from that day on. Tracy knew why. Marilyn's mom came over one night crying and told her mom everything. And then the very next day, Miss Weichelman had a terrible announcement to make to the class. "About Marilyn," Miss Weichelman started. She looked so grim that everyone in that room knew that this was something very serious. "Marilyn's family has asked me to inform you all that Marilyn has cancer, leukemia." Everyone in the room gasped. Some of the kids cried. Tracy just looked at the floor and fought back her own tears. Miss Weichelman added quickly, "But there is a great deal of hope. Marilyn will undergo a series of treatments called chemotherapy. This treatment will eventually kill all of the cancer cells in her body, but it will sometimes make her sick while it is fighting the cancer." The whole class just sat and stared for a time. "Well, is she ever coming back to school?" Danny Bridges called out. "Well, yes, in a few weeks she will return, but I warn you, she will look quite different. These treatments will make her lose all of her hair. She will probably wear a wig or a scarf, but she won't have any hair," Miss Weichelman added softly. "And there may be times that she will feel sick or very tired." Miss Weichelman suddenly lost all the color in her face and quickly sat down. "But Miss Weichelman, sometimes when people get cancer, they get really sick, don't they?" one of the children blurted out. Miss Weichelman stared at the window for a moment, then collected herself. "There is no doubt that some do not survive, but our Marilyn most certainly will, but she'll need all of us to help her through this." Tracy stared at the basket of lemons and thought to herself that no matter how much sugar was added, there wasn't going to be lemonade this time. As the days passed, Tracy and Miss Weichelman were almost permanent fixtures at Marilyn's house. One day, shortly after her chemo began, Tracy walked in while Marilyn was brushing her hair. She was staring at her hairbrush. It was full of strands and clumps of her beautiful hair. "My hair, it's falling out," Marilyn cried as she pulled the hair from the brush and tried to put it back on her head. "I even made a wish on a star last night that I wouldn't lose my hair," Marilyn sobbed. And from that day on, some days were good and some weren't for Marilyn. One day, Miss Wikelman came for a visit. Tracy was already there. It was one of Marilyn's not-so-good days. She had just come from the hospital, and her arms were bruised from all the pokes she'd gotten that day. She was so weak, she could hardly sit up in bed. Nothing Tracy and Miss Wikelman did seemed to cheer her up. "Look, Marilyn, Miss Wikelman brought you a CD of piano concerto to listen to. Mozart, your favorite composer." "Music? I don't care about music. I'm never going to be able to play the piano again with these sore arms. I'm so sick of doctors and hospitals and needles." "Oh, Marilyn, please smile. Smile just for me," Tracy pleaded. Marilyn cried even more. "Smile? How can I smile? I feel so sick. No one knows how bad I feel. No one." And then she buried her head in her pillow. Miss Wikelman held Marilyn in her arms. "Oh, sweet pea, I think I do. I think I know exactly how you feel," Miss Wikelman said softly. And then Miss Wikelman sat back and held Marilyn's face in her hands. "Marilyn, you just have to get well so you can come to my wedding," Miss Wikelman beamed. Your wedding?" Marilyn and Tracy both called out. "When did you get engaged? And to who?" Marilyn smiled broadly for the first time in weeks. "His name is Warren, and girls, this will have to be our secret for a while, but I want you to both be there. I want you both in yellow dresses, lemon yellow as bright as sunshine. We're going to make lemonade out of sour, bitter old lemons, aren't we?" Miss Wikelman whispered. But what if I'm still bald? What then?" Marilyn asked. "Well, so what? What if you are? You'll still be one of the most beautiful girls there," Miss Wikelman reassured her. It was Monday morning. Miss Wikelman and Tracy and the whole class had a huge surprise for Marilyn's return to school. It had been planned that Marilyn be brought to class just after the starting bell so the kids could get their surprise ready. As Marilyn walked down the hall, she was gripping her mother's hand. She had her best scarf on. Tracy opened the door and greeted her. The whole class stood up. They were all wearing funny hats. As Marilyn entered, everyone cheered and clapped, and there was a big sheet cake on Miss Wikelman's desk. Tracy took Marilyn's hands. "Welcome back, Marilyn," she called out. And then she pulled off her funny hat, and everyone in class did. Everyone was bald. They had all shaved their heads. Marilyn's mother caught her breath and clapped her hand over her mouth. Marilyn walked up and down each aisle, looking intently into the face of each of her classmates. When she passed the last desk, she lowered her eyes and slowly pulled off her own scarf and held it in her hands. She felt a warm hand softly caress her hairless head. It was Miss Wikelman. And then everyone gasped. "Look!" Miss Wikelman slowly pulled off her own brightly colored scarf. She, too, had no hair. And then there was a loud cheer. The music was turned on, ice cream and cake dished out, and the celebration began. But Miss Wikelman seemed distracted. She didn't seem as cheerful as usual. With each treatment, the doctor said Marilyn's cancer was disappearing. Marilyn finally completed her last round of chemo. Her hair started growing back right away. It was fuzzy and orange at first, but it soon looked just like it had before, except it was curly and shorter. She and Tracy met after school under the shady elm with Miss Wikelman every week. They'd become very close. They called themselves the Lemonade Club. Miss Wikelman read poems. Sometimes she cried. She said it was because the words are so beautiful. They talked about everything, and of course they loved hearing about plans for Miss Wikelman's wedding. Soon the entire class returned to a normal routine. Everyone's hair was growing back. But one day, Bernie Carlisle called out, "Hey, Miss Wikelman, how come you're still wearing your scarf? Ain't you got no hair under there?" Miss Wikelman knew he was kidding, but she didn't laugh. She tugged at her scarf and looked out the window. Something seemed wrong. Tracy passed a note to Miss Wikelman that read, "Emergency meeting of the Lemonade Club today, after school, under the elm." Later that day, Tracy and Marilyn sat under the shade of the old elm tree. It was Marilyn who spoke up. You have to, don't you have it too, don't you, Miss Wikelman, for real? That's why you said you know exactly how I felt." Miss Wikelman couldn't seem to speak, and when she finally did, her eyes were filled with tears. "I have cancer, girls," she said, almost in a whisper. "So you're going to fight this, aren't you?" Marilyn demanded. "Yes, I'm almost finished with chemo," Miss Wikelman said as her voice trailed off. "Will that get rid of it?" Tracy asked. No, I'll have to have surgery eventually. Surgery? I didn't have surgery, Marilyn said. Well, you had a cancer in a different way than I do. Miss Wikelman seemed deep in thought. I don't know what I would do without you two, Miss Wikelman sighed as she lay back on the grass and looked at the clouds. Both of you have taught me so much and affected my life. Because of you, I've thought again about being a doctor. I applied to Stanford Medical School. I wanted to help children just like you, Marilyn. But since I started the treatments, I think I've lost my courage. Miss Wikelman's voice trailed off. Hey, Marilyn bellowed, you are not going to let something like cancer stomp on your dreams, are you? You are always teaching us to keep our dreams no matter what, Tracy added. If you can dream it, you can be it, the three of them said together. You'll make a wonderful doctor, Tracy whispered. And Warren loves you. What more could you want? Marilyn said. Miss Wikelman took a lemon out of her basket. Well then, girls, to the Lemonade Club, she said triumphantly. To the Lemonade Club, Tracy and Marilyn echoed. It was an especially sunny day. People were gathering in the church, even though it had been 5 years since they had been Miss Wikelman's students. Almost the whole class from then was sitting together. The music was softly playing, and one of Miss Wikelman's favorite hymns. The flowers were so beautiful, everyone there was thinking about Miss Wikelman. Suddenly, the congregation sprang to its feet. The music boomed a joyous trumpet voluntary, and there, standing in their lemon-yellow gowns, were Tracy and Marilyn. They beamed as they marched down the aisle to join the groom at the front of the church. And then everyone turned and looked as Cynthia Wikelman appeared. Tracy and Marilyn were right. She was a beautiful bride. She glowed as she floated like a cloud down the aisle. Dr. Cynthia Wikelman became the wife of Dr. Warren Gish on this glorious day, and they were all there together to celebrate it. A sweet lemonade indeed. Well, as I said, you have to read the very end. I know all of this to be true because Tracy is my daughter, Patricia Polacco's daughter, and Marilyn is one of her best friends, and Cynthia is indeed my daughter's former teacher who went on to become a doctor after battling cancer and winning. She is very dear to my entire family, for we look to her and her example to find our own courage, inspiration, and most of all, hope. And these are the real people from the story. Patricia Polacco, the author, with Miss Wikelman. There's Tracy and Marilyn, the two best friends, and there is Miss Wikelman with her husband Warren. I hope you enjoyed the story. Remember that it's 2 points, so make sure you're taking those quizzes. And I know we're all making the best out of this little bit of a sour situation, so make sure you stay positive and go Broncos!
Hi Bronco, I'm Isaiah, and my hobby is making things. I'm going to show you how to make a Spider-Man mask. Okay, first you need to cut out the templates. These aren't my templates. I got them from the Replica Prop forum from a user named Gimpy. The template is great, but we need to modify it a little bit to make it easier to glue up. On the front face piece of the template, there is a gap cut out for a separate piece to be glued in. Ignore that gap and cut a line that follows the curve going down to the bottom piece in order to make the mask work better. And then the rectangle piece is not needed. After you cut out all the template, trace them onto the foam and cut that out, making sure to cut slight bevels on the pieces that will be glued to themselves. After that, you can clean up all of the pieces with a Dremel. Then you can glue everything up. Make sure that when you're gluing everything, you line up the pieces correctly and give the glue enough time to dry before connecting the two pieces. Once everything is glued together, you can use the Dremel to clean up any of the seams that did not look good. After that, you can give the whole thing a coat of Plastidip and start working on the eyes. To make the eyes, you need to first put a piece of paper where the eyes are going to go from underneath the helmet, and then trace out the shape of the eye. Then give it a little bit of a border and cut that out. That will be the trim around the eye. Then use that template you've made to cut out the eye trim from 2mm craft foam, and make sure to Plastidip that too. You can use the hole from the eye trim to trace out onto the domed part of the soda bottle to make the actual lenses. Then cut them out using scissors. On the lenses, make sure to give a little bit extra room around the whole thing in order to glue the fabric on. You need to choose a very, very thin fabric, and then hot glue it around the edge of the lens. This way, when someone looks at your helmet, they will not see your face underneath, but you can look through, and in good lighting, it shouldn't be too hard to see. I chose to make this helmet look a little bit like Venom, so I had to glue on the trim first, and then add the hot glue Venom tendrils around it, and then paint it again, before I could put the lenses in. Normally, what you would do is glue the lenses to the trim, and then glue the trim into the mask. And there you have it, a Spider-Man mask.